We're going to talk now about the door, because it's so important. We said even entering the book of Revelations, you must enter the door, which is Christ himself. And now we're going to see, as you enter the end times, if you want to enter that rapture, that first fruits rapture, those caught up before the tribulation, those that are going to the wedding feast, if you want to enter there, you must come through the door there too, which is Christ himself. And we'll see the importance and the purpose that God has put in his word upon the door. And we'll start in the book of Revelation. In chapter 3, and in the message to the church of Philadelphia, he had nothing bad to say to the church of Philadelphia. And then you go to the next church, which is commonly referred to as the end times church. He has nothing good to say to them. He says he'll spit them out of his mouth, that they're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. And I was seeking God today. How is it that the end times church, that's all you have to say? Because the church of Philadelphia is the church right before the church that goes into the tribulation. And he has nothing bad to say to them. In fact, he says to them, in Revelations 3:10, he says, because you have kept the word of my perseverance, I also will keep you from the hour of testing, that hour which is about to come upon the whole world to test those who dwell upon the earth. He tells the church of Philadelphia that he will keep them from that hour of testing. And look what he says, saints. In Revelation 3, verse 7, the message to the church of Philadelphia, and to the angel of the church of Philadelphia write, he who is holy, he who is true, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, and who shuts and no one opens. The one who opens a door and no one can shut it. The same one who shuts a door and no one can open. You're about to have another revelation of the end times here and this door. And in verse 8, he says, I know your deeds. Behold, I've put before you an open door. The church of Philadelphia says, I put before you an open door. This is the pre-tribulation rapture church. This is the ones that get raptured in the pre-tribulation and go to the wedding feast. He has nothing bad to say about these, because this message to this church is referring to the first fruits rapture. Those that are ready and waiting. Their lamps are lit. They're not drunk. They're not loving the world and the things of the world. And he puts an open door before them. And I thought, why then is Laodicea nothing good to say? Because all the ones that are prepared, all the ones that are walking with him, all the ones that are ready for the wedding, he takes them before the tribulation. And he says, I put before you an open door, which no one can shut. Why? Because you have a little power. In these end days, everybody thinks that before the tribulation, this big power is going to come upon the church. It's not. It doesn't until the tribulation starts. But these that are going to be caught up in the pre-tribulation rapture, he says they have a little power. And they have kept my word. And here, saints, as I told you, his name is Yeshua. It always has been Yeshua. Jesus is an interpretation of that, a translation of it. But what does he say here? And have not denied my name. Those that have not denied his name, have heard his word, have that little bit of power, are waiting for him. Not loving the world and the things of the world, he puts an open door before them. And what's the next thing we see about this open door and the end times? We see in Matthew chapter 24, Matthew chapter 24, again going back to Noah. Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, talking about the end times. The days of the tribulation are numbered. You will know exactly from the first day, the first hour of the tribulation, the middle of the tribulation, and the end of the tribulation. But what does he say in verse 36? But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son of Man, but the Father alone. The day that the tribulation, the hour that the tribulation is going to start, no one knows. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For as in those days which were before the flood, referring here to before the tribulation, they were eating and drinking. They were marrying and given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. These aren't evil things. These aren't referring to evil people. The church, the people of God are just going about their life. They're not aware of the times. They're not getting ready. They're not preparing. Noah did the work. Noah built an ark. Noah heard the word of the Lord. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. What do we read in Genesis chapter 7, verse 16 and 17? And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, entered as God had commanded him. And the Lord closed it behind them. Then the flood came upon the earth. The Lord closed the door. Just like we were just reading about, Philadelphia has an open door. And here, Noah and these are protected. They entered the ark, and God closes the door. Just like we read, and we got these messages, go back and see them, on the 10 virgins. And in Matthew 25, verse 10, when referring to these 10 virgins, 5 were foolish and 5 were prudent. The prudent were ready and waiting, and they had oil and their lamps were lit. The foolish weren't ready. They didn't have the oil. They weren't prepared. And in verse 9, but the prudent answered, saying, no, there will not be enough for us, and you too. Go instead to the dealers and buy some for yourself. The foolish weren't prepared. They weren't ready. They didn't have the oil. And they wanted some from those who did. And they said, go to the dealers and buy some for yourself. It's saying the same thing. Go and pay the price. You didn't pay the price. Noah did the work. He paid the price and he was ready. 5 of these virgins didn't pay the price and they weren't ready. And in verse 10 it says, and while they were going away to make the purchase, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast. Saints, don't let them deceive you. The wedding feast is before the marriage supper in a Jewish wedding. The wedding feast is when the groom took his friends to his father's house to have a feast as the bride, the church as a whole, prepared herself. The ones that are going to get raptured in the pre-tribulation rapture, as I refer to as the first fruits rapture, those that are ready and ripe and ready first, they will go with him to his father's house, heaven, and he will serve them. You will be there, his friends, as we have this wedding feast while the bride prepares herself. When the bride is ready, during the tribulation, she will be made ready, and then there would be the wedding feast, the marriage supper. The marriage supper will be then, and we will go with him to the marriage supper, and we will be one with him, and we will become his wife as the bride. And look what it says here after that, saints. In verse 10 again, let's say, and while they were going away to make their purchase, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door was shut. Just like in Noah's times. They were eating, drinking. He's not referring to evil people. but they were working. Noah was doing the work of preparing for the flood. The prudent virgins were ready and prepared for the coming tribulation, and they went with him to the wedding feast, and then the door was shut. Saints, there's going to be a call to the wedding feast, which is before the marriage supper. And as it says here in Noah, that came, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. The wedding feast, we will be called, those waiting, watching, ready, will be called to the wedding feast, to have the wedding feast with him at his Father's house. And then the flood will come, and then the tribulation will come. And then, as we saw in the two churches, Philadelphia and Laodicea, the church of Philadelphia, those waiting, watching, that have that little bit of power and kept his name, they're taken. And that's why in Laodicea, he has nothing good to say. He already took the ones that were waiting, watching, ready. And you read in Revelations, when it's talking about coming up for the marriage supper, it says, because the bride has made herself ready. She's put on her clothes. She's no longer naked. She's no longer dressed in the clothes of Egypt and Babylon. Babylon will have fallen. The world will be crumbling, and she'll see it. Having been caught up in the flood, she will then prepare herself. And then we will all meet for the marriage supper of the Lamb. And we will become his wife.